All right, so we have left off with threading your needle. So now that I have my thread onto my needle, now I've got to get it onto my project. So there are two ways to do this, and forgive me if you can't see very well. I'm going to do my best. So the first way, if you're lucky and you have a skinny needle, you should be able to take this tail at the very, very end of it and tie a double knot big enough that it won't pass through your fabric. So you should be able to do this, to take your thread, make a loop, go around the outside, up through the middle, and pull. Now that's not a very big knot. You can barely see it. It's right there. So I got to tie a double knot. So the easiest way to do that is to try that again. I'm going to make a loop around the outside, up through the middle, just like the start of tying your shoe. And then to get it right on top of that knot, what I'm going to do, and you might need a friend for this part, I'm going to pinch that knot right under my fingers. I'm going to hold these two and I'm going to pull it. And as I pull, it's going to tie right on top of that first knot, or it should be pretty darn close. So that one did do that. It's good to go there. So you can see my knot got twice as big. Still super tiny. Still super, super tiny. So if I go to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start right here. Now there's a problem with this one because like I said, our string is on top of a needle that's huge compared to what most needles are. So if I go to pull this, even though I have a double knot, if I yank on it, look, it comes right out. So that is not what I want. The nice thing is, because we're sewing these inside out, this side, no matter what it looks like, will get hidden inside of your corn bag. So even if it looks a little ugly, a little bit unpolished, that's okay because it's going to get hidden. So what you can do, and let me see if I can zoom in enough that I can still do this and have you see. Hi, guys. Okay, 5, please. 8, guys, 5, please. Just because students walked in doesn't mean we get to disrupt. Remember, it's recording. All right, so instead what I'm going to do is this knot, I could sit here and tie 5 or 6 on top of each other. That would work, but I don't have time for that. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie it right onto my bag. So I'm going to find the 2 needles that I put 3 fingers apart, my marker ones, and I'm going to pick a side and about a half an inch, so about a fingernail width off of the edge. I'm going to put it right in there. And I'm going to pull it all the way until I have just a couple inches left of tail, because this is what I'm sewing with, so I don't want to put it right up near the needle. And then once I do that, I'm going to make a loop. You see my loop? I'm going to come around that one. I'm going to go through the loop again. And I'm tying a knot, but this time I'm tying a knot around the outside of my bag, the very edge of it. So this one again, so I can take my tail, come around, back down through the rabbit hole, pull it. Now I've got a double knot, but now that little loop is sitting right here around the edge of my fabric. So if I tug on it, see how it doesn't come out? That's what I want. If it comes out, then you got to try again. It doesn't matter how you get it to not come out. You want it to not come out. When you are done with that, then you start sewing. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sew a little bit. You're going to punch that down and up. Do you guys remember weaving from last year? Yeah. This is basically weaving, except now you only go one direction. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So if you take a look, see how on my needle, it goes down, autofocus. Here we go. It goes down and then above and below and above. So if I'm pulling that, you're going to see that it's going to look like footprints. So it's going to have one and then not one and then have one and then not have one. So since I picked white, it's going to be a little harder to see. I probably should have picked black, but you're going to see that. Now, kids will get to a corner and they'll say, Mrs. Walton, I don't know what to do. How do I turn? Well, you just put the needle in a different spot. That's all you turn. So if I take this and instead of going here, I go over here, the thread's going to follow the needle. You don't have to worry about turning. You just put your needle somewhere else. So I'm going to pull it. So you're going to want to make it snug. If you pull too tight, it's going to get bunched up like that. So just enough to touch the fabric like you're giving somebody a hug. When you give them a hug, you don't want to go, woo! You just want to give them a hug that's a nice hug. If you're like, you don't want to give your grandma a hug. You want to give her a nice, comfy, loving hug, not I'm going to strangle you hug. You want to be nice to your family. Nice to the people at home. So when you guys are doing this, let's say you get to the end of your thread. Now, if you notice, my stitches are very small. My stitch here, if you can see it, is only about that long. So I'm looking to make a stitch that's smaller than a kernel of corn on both sides. So you don't want to have a stitch that goes like this. You can see a little bit of it, I hope. You don't want to have a stitch that goes like this and then has a big blank space, and then the next stitch is here, because that big blank space is a stitch on the other side. So all of your spaces you want to have smaller than a kernel of corn, because that's what you're putting into it. If it's bigger than that, it's going to fall out, and then your corn bag's going to be empty, and then it's just going to be a couple pieces of fabric, which is no good. So once you guys get there, if you get to the end, let's say you get to the end of your thread. So let's say you have this much thread left. That's about 1 finger worth, maybe 1.5 fingers. Let it be a few inches, because I need some thread, or you're going to need some thread, really. If you sew all the way to here and you try and make a knot, good luck, because there's no thread to tie it with, because it's too short. Leave some space. Once you get there, you can tie it off the same way you finished it. So you go around the edge, pull it through, you make your loop, come through your loop, and then you can come underneath to make another loop, go through the middle to double knot, and now it's tied on enough that it's not going to come out. Trim that off, and then once you have a new thread, to start it again, you just punch it through just like you did before. Pull it till the tail comes to the end. Tie a loop, go through the middle of the loop. I like to wrap it around my needle to make it easy. I've had a lot of practice. And then once I've got that tied on so it won't pull off, I keep going. So you're going to want to sew from your starting pin. You're going to want to sew around the edge all the way until you get back to your end pins. So this is the only gap. Everything else will be sewn. You tie it off. We take your pins out. We flip it inside out. All right, I'm going to pause our recording. And then you guys are going to get started. Okay, 5 guys. Hang on. Oh, there it is. Hang on. Stop.